Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Mystic and the Dreamer with Priscilla D. Macedo and Peter H. Folkdale. Today, we're going to talk to you about something that I really enjoy as an empath myself and how sensitivity is one of our key strengths. And what do I mean by that? This is a topic of how do you actually feed your energetic body? You know, most of us around, January and New Year's, we're so concerned about our next endeavor and our goal setting ways and what is our New Year's resolution. Then, of course, people go into diets and, you name it. But in my humble opinion, of course, diet and food and all of that is very important in how you feed yourself physically. But how are you actually feeding yourself and your energetic body? Energy carries a lot of emotion and a lot of things that influence our mind and influence our physical bodies as well. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and shift this to Peter as we talk about this topic.
Yeah, hi. I'm going to start this in the worst way I possibly can. And I'm going to ask you to consider one thing. How much do you think about Donald Trump? So,
I don't want to talk about this.
My guess is that most people who listen to this are not, how should we put this, fans of Donald Trump. But what I see is that Donald Trump is, in a spiritual sense, perfect for everybody who wants to work with their own dark sides. Because this man is a narcissist. This man is not very ethical. So, how much do you think of him? How much do you hate him? I go on Facebook and I see people with the same left-leaning tendencies as I have being totally obsessed about him. How can you be obsessed about something without not becoming a Trump yourself? And those people who tend to get obsessed about Trump, and I'm talking about obsessions, I'm not talking about being against him politically, which is a total different matter. How can you spend so much energy fighting something unless that is a part of your own psyche? So when we talk about how we feed ourselves, there's one thing that is an absolute given, and that is no matter where we stand politically, no matter what our likes and dislikes are like, we need to feed ourselves with positivity as well, and preferably much more of that than the things we dislike. So many people are talking about how this world is, turning to shit. It's only true on one level, actually. On another level, we actually live on a planet where people are richer than they ever were. There are a lot of positive things happening as well. And having said that, I don't mean we should forget about global warming. We should forget about all the right-wing dictators that are popping up everywhere now. Hungary, Brazil, the US. We do have problems. Certain things in the world are definitely going in the wrong direction. But we have to feed ourselves with positivity. We have to find that side in us. Because even if you are a fighter, even if you think that you are going to fight what's evil in this world, you also have to have more room for the exact opposite.
Right. And hopefully you didn't just turn off right there with the word Donald Trump. So just so you know, this is not a political show.
It's not.
I was actually surprised Peter went that way, but heck, I understand where he's coming from. Yes, exactly. I think what I was trying to convey in the beginning, and that's what Peter was actually conveying about positivity and feeding your soul. Because that's the truth, isn't it? We are energetic beings. We're not just a physical body. We are energetic beings. We're multidimensional. And, when it comes to the spirit, when it comes to our mental body, our emotions, and our own physical body, they're all intertwined. And so, of course, the spirit influences the mental body, and the mental body influences the emotions, and emotions influence the physical. There is a lot to it than that. And the mental body, the emotional body, is very susceptible to what we see, to what we read. Hollywood and advertisement companies know this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where they make their big business, of course. They understand that emotional effect that we have in our bodies once we see something, any Hollywood movie, any blockbuster film, anything to do with that sticks to us, good or bad. So being an empath myself, this is the waters I had to navigate with my sensitivity, because as Peter was just describing about our political issues and the climate of the world, I'm sure I'm not alone when I say this. I mean, most people are so hypnotized by the TV right now that's becoming our, I don't know, people think that's where you get your education all of a sudden, and that's a really scary thought, because that's exactly where, that's where I'm trying to convey to people. How are you actually feeding yourselves energetically? Because looking back, I remember when I wasn't truly that aware of this. And I was watching the news every morning before I would go to work. And then you're wondering why I had, I was angry, I was on edge, I was driving fast, I was, my pulse was running, and it kept going and going and going. So, here's the beauty of this, and this is also where people have to realize. Our mental body does not understand, reality, like what's happening in front of us now and what you come up with in your head or what your thought forms are. Your physical body perceives it as it's happening right now. And this is very important. So anything you do ingest, and as you look out on the TV and you're reading, it influences your body. Those emotions are tied to your body. Your physical body doesn't understand the difference. So it's not that we have to shy away from the negative, of course not. But there's a fine balance here, isn't there? Yeah. I mean, you can't have. That's what I'm saying. Are you always constantly watching the news? Are you constantly being surrounded by negativity? How is your environment? How are you feeding yourself? Are you taking this time for silence? Are you taking this time to be with people you enjoy? Is your environment good? Are you surrounded by toxic people? Because remember, thought forms are a thing. They're energetic, but my God, your body can't tell the difference. It's a thing for them. It's happening in real time. Yeah. So your emotion carries a lot of energy. And, as an energy healer, I understand that. I understand that we go through this process, and that's why post-traumatic stress disorders, have such a huge effect on people in their daily lives, because their physical body are reacting to something that they perceived as real time. And anybody that has dealt with anxiety knows this. Your subconscious is running the show. Yeah. And your body's reacting. So exactly this. Carolyn Mace is such a brilliant intuitive that, she did coin this phrase, medical intuition, but she also said that our biography becomes our biology. And what does that mean? It means that the stories we tell ourselves in our minds, how we talk to ourselves, everything surrounding us, our biography, our body is listening. Our cells are listening. And that influences your health. That influences a whole lot of things.
Carolyn Mays also coined the phrase woundology. When we are in love with our wounds, when we are in love with the awful childhood we had, the things that happened to us, the way our partners treated us, the way our parents treated us. Woundology. That's a wonderful word. And we have to move away from that. And I would like to tell you just a short story from my boring life. About 2 years ago, and that was actually after meditating for 25 years, something I was very bad at. I've never been a very good meditator until recently. But about 2 years ago, I made some subtle but incredibly important changes in my life. And that is that I decided when I woke up in the morning, I would not go and turn on the TV immediately. I would not even go and write. Being a novelist, that's something I have done a lot in my life. I had to meditate first. So every morning, the last 2 years I've done this. Every morning I start off by meditating and praying for the good of everybody in the world, and obviously also for protection for myself and my loved ones. It's only 5 minutes. Sometimes it's half an hour, but I tell myself that 5 minutes are okay. I start all my mornings like that, and the next thing I do is I jog or I walk, meaning I get my body going, because I'm someone who has had a lot of anxieties from very early on, and some of them I never understood until a few years ago. I still very often wake up in a semi-anxious state, and by praying or doing that short meditation of 5 minutes, and then getting out, walking or jogging, and again, I have become wise enough not to set any ridiculous intentions like I have to run for half an hour or I have to do this and that. I simply go out. And sometimes I only walk. That's quite often. I'm lazy. Other times I jog a little, I sprint. But I do that every morning, and you have no idea how much that has helped my life. In that way, getting all kinds of toxic out of my body, and actually most of all my toxic mind, the one I have. And then the second thing
toxic mind.
And then the second thing that I've done is that every afternoon I meditate for half an hour. I journal at the same time. For me, that's a good thing since, I've been a professional writer since I was 25. So I also discovered by journaling, which by the way is something I've done for much longer than the last 2 years. Then I get a lot of information and insight about what I should do in life, and also often other insights of semi-psychic character, and that has helped me as well. So those two changes, short prayer, meditation in the morning, out jogging and walking, no matter what the weather is like, and then in the afternoon, half an hour meditation, have changed my life in a way that only I can measure, so to speak. I'm much better. I'm less moody. I'm a very emotional man. I always was. I'm very un-Danish in that sense. I've become much more stable inside. That helps my relationship to not just myself, but to everything, everybody, the political situation, my friends, my family. So I would just give that as an example of one of those positive things we can do for ourselves. And hey, they don't cost a lot. This is very valuable advice. And of course, you should find your own way of doing this. But starting your morning by either prayer or meditation is sound advice. If you ever listen to Marianne Williamson, I'm a big fan of her and her work on Course in Miracles. She always says the same, that you should start your day never by filling your mind with poison, whether it's the news, whether it's your problems, but praying and asking, in her terminology, asking the Holy Spirit that to take over your mind so you don't ruin your own day by all the things that went wrong in your past that you like to torture yourself with, and also all the worries about the future. So in the terminology of A Course in Miracles, it's the Holy Spirit that you give your thoughts to him or her. But of course, it doesn't have to be the Holy Spirit. Whatever you believe is that you ask for a divine mind that doesn't see problems and anxieties and hatred and anger everywhere, because no matter what we think about this world, no matter how much we think it's going to hell, it's still an amazingly beautiful place.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, toxic mind. I like that. I mean, we are human beings. Let's be completely honest, right?
We are.
I mean, and that is our part of our divine plan here and purpose is to actually experience everything in this 3D realm and whatever free will choice indicates to us, of course, and which way you want to go with it. But since we are also an energetic being, having this human experience, we do need to understand, once again, the concepts that these are intertwined, and that's why a lot of the people right now that are like, for example, Dr. Joe Dispenza is talking about how our mind, how we can affect our health just by our mind and our thoughts alone. As many people in the medical field know what the placebo effect is. And you all heard the placebo effect and how powerful that is. And that's the thing. We are powerful creators. And it is important that we do take that time to feed our energetic body with good positivity, good things in life. Because there is that tendency, because our physical body is always taking clues from our mental noise and our surroundings, that our physical body, and I mean this in a very delicate way, it actually becomes a slave with all the routines that we do every day. So our routines become so mundane that, it's becomes so automatic to our body. And that's why sometimes it's important to get out of your routine. That is why it's important to explore new avenues and new things. And be with other people in a creative way and explore things that you're passionate about, because that's the creative fire we all have within us. It's not about routine, and it's not all about, focused on the negative polarity, because focus intention is so huge. If you do focus on that negative all the time, and you keep running that same tape in your mind about all the thoughts that you're no good, or all the thoughts that, all these self-defeating thoughts you have, well, guess what? They actually do become prophecy, right? Prophecy in your future, like it's written, because you keep repeating this stuff over and over again. The mind is a very powerful tool. Yeah. So this is why, the only reason why I say this is that we as a culture, we're in such an advantage point in one way, having all this technology, right? It does make our lives easier and does make our life better, absolutely. But then there's also the shadow side of technology, which is this disassociation. It's not having that true connection or one-on-one connection with people anymore. It's not about having heart connections anymore. And we kind of need to watch ourselves here. We're at a very delicate place in time where either technology is going to surpass our humanness, and that's a scary thought right there. And part of the reason why I say, be really mindful, be mindful how you start off your day, how you want your days to be, because that is it in a nutshell. Do you want, all this influencing of technology, disassociation, negative polarity, all this negative fear? It's actually fear. Do you want fear to dictate your life? Or do you want love letting it lead? and that's an important factor here. And that's what feeds the soul, is love, connection, joy, right? And of course, as human beings, we're going to have sorrow, we're going to have suffering, but does not mean we have to live there. We don't have to plant a little tent there and say, this is where I'm going to stay. That's not how it works. Your body, your mind, and your heart and your spirit are not there for that. They're there to grow and evolve, not just camp at point negative and stay there.
I have another little story from my own unbelievably boring life. Before I wrote novels, I was a satirical writer in Denmark on national Danish radio, and I made a living off writing satire. A bit like the kind of stuff you see on Jon Stewart and all those guys. We weren't as good, of course, but we were a group of 4 who did satire every Sunday morning in Denmark for like 1 million people. And at that point, I had already written satire for theater and for newspapers, and I was really into that world. And after having done that show Sunday morning for 2 years, something suddenly happened to me. I got extremely tired of it. But what I actually got tired of was my own mind. Because, satire is a wonderful thing. I still have a satirical bent on a lot of things. There's nothing wrong with it in itself. I also admire brilliant satire like you see with Trevor Noah and with Jon Stewart. I think it's fantastic. But what I discovered was that because my whole working life was about satire, that I had become incredibly critical towards everything. It was like my whole mind was about, how can I find an angle to this, and how can I make fun of this, and how can I show how ridiculous and awful this is, because that is basically what satire is all about. And I remember thinking, I've had enough now. And I left the group we were 4 guys who had done that. I was the first to leave the group. I just didn't enjoy it anymore. And that is just a subtle or not so subtle way where you find that even things that, aren't evil, they affect you. It affects your mind. It affects your way of looking at the world. And, I'm not making the point that you shouldn't write satire. I mean, ever since that time, I put out, 13 novels, and some of them are very satirical, others are not. Maybe it's because I have a lot of Scorpio in my horoscope and a lot of Gemini. That combination is actually fairly decent for satire. So it's still with me, but it doesn't control me. I have a fairly optimistic mind. I didn't used to, because I don't let it feed me the way it did. It's not my whole working life. So I think maybe a little experiment could be, where is it that you feed yourself with something isn't good for you? So you could make a little experiment if you go on Netflix and see the last 20 films or TV series you've watched. Are they all thrillers? Are they all films that enjoy the humiliation, rapes, murder? Is that all? Is that all you watch? Is that your favorite thing to watch? Again, I don't think there's anything, absolutely nothing wrong with thrillers, especially not if they deal with the human condition and if they are not made just to make people scared. There are a lot of fantastic thrillers. Some of my favorite films have thriller tendencies. So, but again, just watch the negativity, the fear, the anxieties. I mean, how can anyone be surprised that they become more and more anxious if all they do is reading thrillers, watching thrillers and seeing the awful parts of this world everywhere. Also forgetting all the positive. But I think, I know you're not dumb. You get the message we're trying to convey. And again, we're human beings. And again, we should be allowed to do everything. I mean, everything culturally that is negative, as long as we don't overdo it. I mean, I remember I was a huge fan of Lou Reed when I was younger. To a certain extent, I still am. I mean, talking about someone who was dark, talking about someone who also, for a good reason, went into that world of darkness. Because I would never say, like a lot of evangelical Christians, I would never say that you should stay away from everything that's dark. On the contrary, you do need some darkness to understand yourself and understand the world. We can't just have a world where the only thing we can watch is, romantic movies, or where we don't even accept the dark sides we have inside. We need to accept those. And that make me return again to Donald Trump, who...
Oh, please don't. Why we stop talking about him?
whether you like it or not...
I don't like it.
is, a selfie stick. It is the narcissist that we all have inside ourselves. So where is your inner Trump? That I do think that is a valid question to ask, and now I'm going to shut up.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about inner Trumps and all this stuff. So, what I want to...
Then talk about your inner Hillary Clinton.
Okay. Satire person all of a sudden. No, but it's, it is our choices. And the thing is it is true. It is an experiment. And if you're not aware of this, make it an experiment. Make an experiment to see how are you watching, what you're watching is affecting your mood. That's an important thing to take in consideration when
even your dreams,
thinking about your diet. Because it hits your subconscious. It affects you. It does have a cause and an effect here. It really does. So, that's what I'm trying to just convey to you guys, just to take this time maybe to realize, where are you out of balance when it comes to how you feed yourself energetically? Because most of the things that happen is when we are we take that into an over response, is that we either numb ourselves, meaning we had so much already in our energetic field. Either we're not dealing with our emotions, we're not dealing with anything in our emotional body, that what tends to happen is either become very anxiety ridden. The other one is they numb themselves. Or of course your classic depression, right? And if you really look at those three components, you realize how is your daily life structured? Are these routines, are they part of how you feed yourself? Is it feeding yourself in a positive way or negative way? And we all know addictions. I'm not talking about addictions here. I'm really trying to get into your heads that this is something that you need to be mindful about. What we read and what we watch, they're all energy. Thought forms are energy. And they do affect our bodies. And they do affect our subconscious, So just, that's all I wanted to really say, is that we are such a wonderful, powerful creator, that this is part of our mastery. Part of our mastery is to actually see how we're sensitive. And our sensitivity is a very good thing. It's one of our strengths, And part of being that sensitive is, of course, your empathy and compassion. And so it's good that we just take this time, to give that back to us and see how we're actually feeding ourselves in our spirit body,
Yeah, good point. I think we're probably getting there now. I want to thank you all for listening in. I think since I've been talking a tiny bit about satire, that I find it a very good thing that the most famous song by Monty Python is called "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," because we need that, and we also need that right now in the world the way it looks. So thanks for listening to us, all 11 of you, and and please come back because we have more.
Yeah.
I will probably talk about astrology very soon. I was a professional astrology for a long time, and we are definitely also going to talk about cards, where Scylla is a master, and reincarnation, where I've had a lot of experiences. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.